right, how do you want to start this?
I think like we're off center and that's gonna bug me. Yeah, I think that's good. Ready?
Sure.
Cuba!
I don't know what to say to that.
We went to Cuba in December of 2019. It is now
Quarantine 2020.
It's quarantine 2020, so we're now in April. I have no idea what day it is.
Every day's a Monday.
Just like the rest of the world, we're stuck in quarantine. So we thought it'd be a really good idea and very helpful because many people have actually asked us for our Cuban itineraries or our Cuba itinerary or the do's and don'ts of Cuba or just tips in general. So we thought we'd make a video to recap all of this for you all and hope it is helpful.
The first thing is how to book. So we booked straight from the US before the travel ban. We booked through Delta. It was super easy.
Super easy. So we were honestly very scared because we heard a lot of crazy things and crazy stories, but it was seriously a breeze. We booked through Delta. Okay. Simba, say hi. Cuba.
What up, YouTube?
Booking through Delta was super easy. We just booked the ticket. We kind of forgot about it until the day of, and Simba's too. You show up to the kiosk and basically you check in, and then the attendant, the kiosk person, gives you your stamp, which is basically like your visa for your entire stay. The only thing that they do tell you is not to lose it, because if you lose it, you can't come back to the US.
So we actually pre-bought our visas through Delta as we checked in on the flight. I think together it was between 50 to 75 bucks. I know it is cheaper if you go fly from Mexico and anywhere out there. It'd be like $20 a person for the visas, but I think there's a little more red tape because you have to buy health insurance externally. But with us, everything was covered. It was super simple. Delta took really good care of us, so highly recommended. Unfortunately, I don't think you can fly directly to Cuba from the US anymore. There are ways around it. You can fly from TJ, depending on where you're at. You can fly from Mexico. You can fly from anywhere outside of the US to Cuba. So the second tip, very important, offline maps. We knew we were going to Varadero, we were going to Havana, and we're going to Vinales. So ahead of time, I downloaded Google Maps. I pre-downloaded those destinations. So whenever we're in the taxi, we're able to see like what direction we're going, make sure we're not going the wrong way, make sure we're not getting kidnapped. Obviously you don't know where you're at. There's no internet. So having an offline map is very important. And the cool thing about that is that a lot of restaurants, a lot of nightlife places are already pre-downloaded in there. So if you want to walk somewhere, you're able to see exactly where it's at, how far it is.
Yeah.
And sometimes the information like the hours of operation and all that kind of stuff is also pre-downloaded, so you know if it's open or not. Tip number 3 is pre-plan as much as possible. I can't stress that enough. Pre-plan as much as possible.
Yeah.
So from offline maps or going on TripAdvisor, going on Airbnb, seeing what to do, pricing, how long it takes from get to point A to point B. Those are very important because when you're in Cuba, you have absolutely no Wi-Fi and you have no way of just researching what to do.
And like we mentioned in the beginning, YouTube is a very helpful resource. So like I said, I hope this is very helpful. But one thing that I also did is I followed my favorite Instagram bloggers. Nicole Isaacs actually had a trip to Cuba that I had previously seen, and that kind of sparked my idea in the first place to take a trip there. And I just really liked many of the places that she went to, so I did a lot of research on that ahead of time, and it was really helpful for things like restaurants, places to go take good photos, bars, places to go dance. And it's really important to research exactly what it is you want to do, because you kind of can't get there and change your mind. Although the locals are very helpful and they do guide you and help you and give you recommendations as to what you can do, but it's always just better to go there and kind of have an idea in mind of what you want to do, so you end up satisfied and you make the most out of your trip. Another really resourceful tool is Airbnb. So Airbnb not only helps you get housing, but also there's Airbnb experiences. So we actually booked a trip from Airbnb Experience to take us from our Airbnb that we stayed at in Old Havana to Vinales, and that was a whole day trip. So it took us from our hotel to Vinales. We got transportation, we got food,
It took us through a whole excursion, a cave, a tour guide, lunch, drinks. It was an amazing experience. I think it was about $90 a person US. Well worth it. You can definitely try to do it yourself and pre-book all these things individually, but it's just a ton of more work and it's really not worth the headache, and you end up paying about the same thing. So it's just better off to book it all in advance through essentially a travel agency, and it's very safe, it's secure. You can message your hosts directly, and we have absolutely zero complaints with that.
Other than that, our Airbnb was also really cool. We heard a lot of good things about the Airbnbs in Cuba, and on top of that, they're really, really cheap. So you can find an Airbnb for as cheap as like $20 a night, and you have everything you need. So you don't have to worry about a restroom, hot water. Everything you need is in the Airbnb, and we had a really, really good experience at our Airbnb. I personally loved it. It was a really cute, cozy little Airbnb. My favorite part is that they served breakfast on the rooftop every single day for about like something less than $5 US.
It was $5.
Yeah, $5.
Basically, Airbnb is the way to go. We highly recommend it.
Yes.
As Americans, you're also told not to support the Cuban government. You guys do whatever as you please. So supporting the locals directly through Casa Particulares or Airbnbs, which is basically owned by the individuals in Cuba. It's not owned by the government. So again, we highly recommend looking into Casa Particular in Airbnb. And if you guys are new to Airbnb, we'll leave our referral link here so you get some money off. We get a little kickback, but everybody wins. Tip number four. Bring cash. There are zero ATMs. There's zero banks that you can go in and pull out money from your credit. There's nothing. You need hard cash.
If you're traveling with people or with another person, seriously pick the most responsible person to be in charge. Well, it was only us two, so Barry did a really, really good job at managing our money. We had to literally calculate the amount of days that we were staying there and how much money we were going to spend on each of those days, because we only had X amount of money that we took on that trip. And if you're like me, I like to spend money buying little antiques or little things that I see on the street, and especially food. So just be very, very mindful that in Cuba, it is not that easy to exchange your money. There are very limited options. So be smart and
make sure you spread that money as wide as you can.
Yeah.
So basically there are two different types of currencies in Cuba. So it's the CUC, which is what the tourists will get, and the CUP, which is the local exchange rate. But there was about like a 13 to 17% transaction fee. So let's say if you put in $1,000, you get about $875 CUCs. So you get a lot taken out. So that's why it's highly recommended to not exchange all your money at the airport, because there are other places that have better rates. We also found that our taxi drivers mentioned to us that
they can do it for you.
Any taxi driver, any licensed taxis that are operating in Cuba always have cash on hand. So they're able to exchange that to you one-on-one with no transaction rate. For us, it was a little sketchy because it was the first experience we had there.
Yeah.
We got off and they are like, how much money do you have? How much do you exchange? What was the rate? Like, how much did they take? And these things are, to us, were like, we didn't want to give off that much information just landing in Cuba, not knowing the situation, not knowing how the locals interact.
Yeah.
But we ended up exchanging a good amount at the airport, and that's when I realized like they took a ton of money from me.
Yeah.
So
it was kind of sad.
It was very sad. It was very sad because we only had a limited amount of money to begin with, and it got even less.
Yeah.
You know, I kept some dollars on hand just as a safety net. We were able to actually exchange it through our Airbnb experience.
Yeah.
In Viñales, we had a tour at a cigar plantation, and we asked if they would exchange it, and they did it one-to-one, no transaction fee. So we ended up being okay there. People there are very friendly. They are very welcoming. Luckily for us, we had no bad experiences. Everybody was very nice. Looking back at it, I think everybody just really wanted to be helpful. Everybody in Cuba works for tips. So if a taxi driver is able to exchange your money one-to-one with no transaction fees, they'd like a little kickback. So even if you gave them $1 to $2, completely happy with that. So that's kind of the reasoning why everybody is trying to be so helpful. So there's nothing to be concerned about. It's just the way the people. So getting around. Taxis are a big thing in Cuba. There are no Ubers, there are no Lyft drivers.
And can we talk about the fact that everything is a classic car? So you're in here like, what's the ride from Disneyland?
Autotopia?
No.
Cars?
Indiana Jones. You're literally in there like Indiana Jones, like boom, 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 rolling down the street.
So they have regular taxi cars that are just old beat up cars, and those are probably your cheapest, your best rates. You can get around through local transportation, buses and all that stuff, but it's really difficult to get on them. And if you have a bunch of luggage,
and we also didn't see that many buses.
Yeah, so we researched a lot, and it was kind of like you're paying for your time and your experience and all that, and we would rather kind of allot our money to a taxi. Once you land at the airport, there's going to be a ton of people asking, do you have a ride? Where are you going? We felt, just landing from the airplane, not knowing where you're at.
It was my fault. So I was really scared. I don't know why. It always happens. Every time we go somewhere, we land in the airport, and I'm just like automatically sketched out because you're in a new place. Like, you don't know where you're at. You don't know who to trust. And it's a little scary. So as soon as we arrived in Cuba at the airport, everybody was just like looking at us, and I got scared because Barry was exchanging money, and I was there by myself. Everyone's literally staring at us.
They know you have cash. They know you're American. They know you don't know any better. So obviously you have your guard up. Somebody approached us asking us where we were going. I mentioned we were going to Varadero. I looked up online ahead of time, and I realized the going rate to go to Varadero from the airport was about $100 to $125.
The ride is very long.
It's a 2.5 hour drive.
2.5 hours.
So before going all crazy, it's kind of the going rate, and it's what to expect. But I also did read, if you're able to get it anywhere under $100, $80 ideally, take it. A man approached us. He said, you know what, you're trying to go to Varadero? I'm like, yes. I'm like, can you do 80? He said, follow me. So as we're exiting the airport, he tells us to turn around and go upstairs. And there's nobody behind us. I don't know what's upstairs. We're a little freaked out, but you know what? We said, let's go.
And at this point, you really don't have a choice because it's either you get on the taxi or you just kind of stay at the airport.
Yeah. So luckily, we shortly realized that upstairs was departing. So similar to any airport. So there's a lot less competition upstairs. There's a lot less people.
Yeah,
so
less crowded.
The person that approached us was able to negotiate a deal with one of his local connects or contacts. He got us to $80. We tipped him, I think, $8. He was happy. Our taxi driver took us where we needed to go. He was very helpful. Again, very, very friendly, asking us if we needed to exchange money, asking us if we needed to use his phone to let people know that we arrived. He asked if we wanted to log on to our Facebooks, any of that kind of things. I was a little concerned about that because I don't want to...
And take in mind, this is like hour 1 into Cuba, so...
It's very overwhelming.
Yeah, and if you're like me and you're a little bit paranoid and you just want to make sure you're going to the right place, this is where the offline maps also come in handy because you can track where you're going just to make sure
the taxi's taking you in the direct direction.
You're on track, not going somewhere you don't want to be going.
So the next tip we have is personal hygiene essentials.
Yes.
So make sure you bring essentials. So things from baby wipes, toilet paper, Pepto-Bismol, Advil, Pedialyte. We heard the worst, so we prepared for the worst.
Yeah.
We bought absolutely everything we could just to be safe because we were told anywhere you go and everywhere you go, there is no toilet paper, there is no soap, there is nothing really as to the effect of personal hygiene.
In other words, go to the little travel size section at Target and just get every single thing that they have there. Even
though it wasn't as bad as people described it, our Airbnb fortunately had everything we needed. They had
toilet paper,
waters. The waters were for purchase, so you leave your 1 CUC on top of the fridge. They reload it up because that's one thing that people do say is that water is scarce, and if you find somewhere to get water bottles, just load up on them. But luckily for us, our Airbnb had about 10 water bottles at a time. So we just left our little CUC coin on top of the fridge every time we grabbed a water bottle, and we were good to go.
I also think it depends on what city you're in or where you find yourself. For example, in Varadero, we did go to a store where there were very limited resources. We went into like a small liquor store and we did notice that a lot of the shelves were empty, but when we were in Havana, it was the complete opposite. A lot of people actually turned their living rooms into little shops, so they sell food there, they sell little essentials that you kind of might need, but again, like things like toilet paper aren't as easily accessible. And when you go to restaurants, when you go to bars or clubs, they actually sell the toilet paper there, so it's not like your typical restroom where you just go and have everything for free. So you'd have to pay like a couple of cents just to be able to use the restroom. And take in mind that the sanitary component of Cuba is a little different than what you might be used to.
Toilets aren't that clean. The toilets don't flush as well as you'd expect.
Yeah.
But that's usually if you go to restaurants, if you go to public parks, if you go to like when we went to Viñales, you know, it's kind of it's what you expect. You're in a rural location. It's not the best.
Yeah.
It gets the job done, but as long as you have your baby wipes, your hand sanitizer, your soaps,
you'll be good.
You'll be fine.
You'll be good.
So another major component that a lot of people ask about is Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi.
So Wi-Fi is accessible in most major parks, most restaurants, and hotels. But in order to log onto the Wi-Fi, you need to buy a prepaid Wi-Fi card.
Yep.
This Wi-Fi card, I believe, is
I think it's $2?
$2 to $3, I believe.
Yeah.
And if you go,
it depends where you buy it too.
If you buy it on the street from people reselling it, it's about $5 a card, which is a little much. But if you really, really need it, go for it. Some restaurants will offer you free Wi-Fi with the purchase of a meal. The problem with that is that they're all hovering from the same Wi-Fi, I guess, tower. So if everybody in that restaurant has free Wi-Fi and is logged on, your Wi-Fi is extremely, extremely slow. So
you can't do anything.
You can't really watch a YouTube video. You can't open Instagram. You can't send an email.
No, you're nowhere near close to being able to watch a YouTube video.
You can
maybe send a text, but no more than that.
Just be mindful. You need those cards. They're good for an hour.
Yeah.
So you basically get the card. It gives you a little scratcher. You log on to that Wi-Fi through your phone, plug in that code, and it gives you an hour. And I believe you don't have to use the hour, or if you don't use the full hour, it
saves up. So it's in like in increments. You can use it in increments.
It's like a prepaid cell phone card.
Yeah. So like 30 minutes at a time, 10 minutes at a time, whatever. But we do recommend to enjoy the experience. When you go to Cuba, you don't see a lot of people on their phones.
Yeah.
There's a lot of social interaction. It's very lively, and you see people communicating, kids playing on the street, which is really, really nice because that's not something that we're used to living in the U.S. Everybody's hooked on their phone. Everybody wants to post on Instagram. So if you are going to Cuba, make the best out of the experience and try and live like the locals.
Live it up. I mean, the most important thing is to make sure you tell your loved ones that you're safe, that you're good, because for the most part, our family was blowing up our phones that you guys are alive. They're thinking the worst.
There was like a time period, I think we went like maybe 3 days, and everybody was like, where are you guys? Are you safe? Are you alive? But we were able to manage and kind of text them when we could.
All right, so now food. Food is a big thing in Cuba. So like we mentioned, places like Viñales, places like Varadero are very, very rural. Those are places that are by
either the water or like the tobacco plantations, farms.
So it's basically, if they can grow it, if they can kill it, they'll eat it.
That's what you get.
And things like small luxuries like mashed potatoes, you probably won't get. And if you do, they'll be the ones that are powder form and mixed water, and you can taste that. For the most part, you'll get what are their traditional dishes, which is a lot of pork, chicken. So when we were in Varadero, we actually stumbled across a food cart, and they were just grilling whole chickens. And we were able to get half a chicken, I believe, for $2.
So good.
And they marinated it with whatever their marinade was. They grilled it, and they hand it over to you. You can pour whatever hot sauces they have, but that's really it. No forks, no tortillas, no bread, no nothing. It's really just your hands and the chicken.
And if you're like me, every time I go to a different country, I like to eat everything. I like to try everything. I'm not scared. I kind of just go for it. And the $2 chicken was my thing. It was so good. And I think a lot of people are really, really concerned about getting sick. That's something that we heard a lot. Like a lot of people weren't drinking ice cubes, like their drinks with ice. We didn't get sick, but that's also why we recommend taking essentials. So Tums and Pepto are like a really big thing that can be helpful. But we personally didn't get sick. We ate a lot. We ate everywhere. We ate at all kinds of restaurants, and we really enjoyed the food. So it was good.
I think the biggest thing too to be mindful of is when you go to foreign countries, you think that you're gonna get traveler's diarrhea, things like that. But you also have to notice places like Cuba rely a lot on tourism. So even though as Americans, we don't see tourists, we don't see our, I guess, people go to Cuba, Europeans go to Cuba heavily. So Cuba relies a lot on that tourist money. So they take all the precautions to make sure that everything is safe. Again, from the ice cubes, they create the ice cubes from bottled waters. So we actually seen that happen. They never touch the straws. They use actually these like metal prongs to like put the straws on your cup. So a lot of things like that we don't even do in America is how they take care of their people out there, because again, tourism money is crucial for people in Cuba. That's mainly for Varadero and Viñales, but Havana is a complete different thing. Havana has everything from
so good.
Italian to French to American to obviously Cuban to dessert places to you name it.
Yeah.
They have everything. Our best meals was at what we consider to be our last resort place.
Yeah, so speaking of Nicole Isaacs, this blogger that I follow, I kind of followed a little itinerary that she had put together, and there was this place called D Next, and on our itineraries that we make, I was like, I don't really want to go here. This is kind of like, if worst comes to worst, if we run out of money, we'll go here and we'll get food here because we'll really have no other option. And I just remember in her notes, it was like pizza and pasta. And I was like, I'm not going to go to Cuba to eat pizza and pasta because that's not the way you think. But one night, I don't know, I remember how, but we were just like, let's go to D-Nax. And oh my God.
Bomb.
So good.
And
just look it up. It's so good.
It's really cheap. So a whole pizza, I think, was like $6. Pasta was like about the same price. Fresh juices and smoothies were like $3 to $4.
Yeah.
We had, I think that first night you ordered pizza, pasta, smoothies. Might have gotten wings. I don't know.
We had to go twice. Okay, I was just gonna settle for once. We had to go twice.
It was that good. It was really that good. But outside of that, you know, they have great. We had Ropa Vieja at another location. We had.
Yeah, don't get us wrong. There's a lot of good places with authentic food. There are a lot of amazing places with really cool like craft cocktails.
We'll probably leave some of the places I went to in the description because there was definitely a couple key places that we would highly recommend.
For sure. Basically, in Havana, you can find everything and anything that you want to eat. They have almost all types of food, a lot of really cute cafes, a lot of cool restaurants with nice rooftop patios.
I think it's just about being open and not being scared to try the food. I mean, I think for me personally, I was a little hesitant about pork just because I don't eat pork in general.
And Barry has like a really weak stomach.
I have a weak stomach. So, you know, I was very hesitant about a lot of the food. But, you know, I said, you know what, we're in Cuba. This is what everybody eats. This is what the locals swear by. So we tried a little bit of everything. I don't recommend it at all. So, again, just be open-minded.
You don't recommend it at all?
I don't regret it at all. I don't regret it at all. And I highly recommend it. Just keep an open mind.
Go hard or go home.
The last thing I think is nightlife and drinks. So the nightlife in Cuba is pretty good. The accessibility of drinks everywhere. Beer of choice, if you're into beer, is Cristal, which I would say it's like
Corona?
Like a Bud Light. It's a domestic beer, but it's like if you really want a beer and you want a cheap beer, which is like a quarter. I think it might be less than $1. And that's kind of the one to go. Obviously, mojitos are a big thing. They make them on the fly.
From scratch.
Caña is
so good.
So accessible in Cuba. So you have fresh cane sugar. None of that, you know, simple syrup stuff. Yeah, it's as good as it can get. And obviously, rum is the drink of choice in Cuba. So a mojito is the easiest and go-to drink out there.
And the pina coladas are the best pina coladas that you will ever have.
So we ended up going to a place called Casa La Música in Varadero. And I don't know how we got recommended to that place, but...
Oh, I know how. Friends recommended us to this place. We went to Casa La Música. It's a really, really cool show that they put on. We have live salsa performances. As tourists or visitors, you do get
priority entrance.
And basically that front row seating so that you can see everything really, really well. The locals don't get priority entrance, so they have to wait in like a really big line until everybody that's a tourist goes in. How much did we pay?
I think it's like a $10 cover for tourists, 10 to 15, I'm not too sure, which is a little steep, but for what you get, it's worth it. It's a live band. Mm-hmm. You have your own table to sit at, which most places you pay a premium.
And front row, you have a really, really good view.
Depending on the time you get there, you can sit front row, second row, whatever row you get. We ended up sitting front row. We just luckily got in the front of the line. Whereas the locals end up getting last access, so they'll basically sit on top of the balcony area, which is another seating area above the dance floor. The live band performs great music, great salsa, very, very cool vibe. There's a bar, there's bartenders. The drinks are very cheap. The drinks keep flowing. And as the night gets a little bit later, and people start drinking a little more, all the tables get pushed back, and it becomes a giant dance floor, and everybody's just having a great time. And we definitely had
too much fun.
A lot of fun. Same thing goes for Havana. There's places to drink, places to dance, places to eat. Everything is great. It's super, super safe. We walked around 2 a.m., 3 a.m.
Yeah,
belligerently drunk.
Yeah, drunk. And don't be scared to be out like past a certain time. It's really safe, even though it may be dark. And Havana feels like you're walking through alleys, or Varadero may feel like you're just walking through like dark streets. It's super, super safe. We never felt like we were in any danger. So
the crazy thing that I noticed too is a lot of locals, they don't really pay tourists any mind. I don't know if there's laws against it, but there's zero catcalling. Like, the women there are beautiful. Arlene was dressed up really, really gorgeous every night, and they would never really give her an awkward stare. They would never whistle. They would never make you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, and honestly, there are many places in the U.S. where I've gone where I felt more in danger than being in Cuba. So honestly, it was very peaceful. I felt very safe. There's kids out at night. Honestly, people in Cuba are just like talking from their balconies, or just like visiting their neighbors and just really minding their own business. So don't be afraid to go out. Like I said, live it up, and it's okay to go drink, go have fun. You're never really in danger. It's very, very safe.
Would you go back?
I would go back to Cuba. One of my favorite things was actually riding a classic car, which we didn't really talk about.
Yeah.
But the classic car, I also really, really recommend. There are taxi drivers, classic cars kind of everywhere in Havana. We were able to get a really, really good rate I wanted a pink car because I had a cute pink dress and I wanted to have a really cool photo shoot. So we were able to find a car. Do you remember how much it was?
I think it was like $30.
Yeah, like $30 for an hour. An hour. So you get to drive around Havana in this cute classic car, and as you're going, he's got the person or the taxi driver.
It's a personal tour guide around the city. I mean, it's a convertible car that we got, so we got great footage, great video, great photos. We're able to see the city.
You'll see in one of our other videos.
Yeah, and it's highly recommended. Negotiate the price as much as you can. Again, pre-plan as much as you can. See what the going rate is. And if you can get it anywhere cheaper than what the going rate is, which I think we did. I think the going rate was like $40 to $60 for an hour.
And I also read that people pay like up to 80 to 100. So when the guy was like $30,
I think it was.
We were like, let's take it.
Let's take it. People really appreciate tips. They don't have to be great tips, as long as you are able to kick them off a little something. I think they'd be genuinely happy.
Something's better.
Anywhere from like $1, sometimes even less than that, depending on what it is. They're very happy with it. Yeah, pre-plan as much as possible.
Go to Cuba.
Go to Cuba.
Do it.